Yeah, mate. Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Everyone's welcome, obviously,
Okay.
but we need a quorum of 4 councillors and 1 mangai. So
I was just going to ask, do you have a quorum? But I see you do now. So
yeah, and Rob, you've put your hand up too, I see, which is cool.
Yeah, I think that's a really good group, really. I think there were hands there with
better, you know.
But the door's open. No, Angela, well, we can put you in the number 2. Yep, we're fantastic.
No, you have to get rid of Smarty grants before I start.
No, that's the thing. We don't do the Smarty Grant stuff anymore.
Oh, you don't?
No, staff does it, and then we assess their assessments, as it were.
Well done. God, that was torturous.
It's a hard little program, all right? Oh, yeah. Okay, so that's everyone's obviously welcome to that one, but we needed a minimum, so that's great. That's really good news.
Right. Good.
So just confirming, we are back live online, and we do have staff here for the next open section.
We have who?
We've got Chris Barton. Grant is on the line.
Did you say staff?
Staff. Yeah,
Sounds
sorry.
Like Steph, it's your accent.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chris, are you leading this one?
I'll hand over to Robin Denton in a second. I think she's come in, but just to introduce the staff and the projects which we're going to go over here today. So we've got 2 items which are planned to come to the Infrastructure Operations Committee on the 28th of September. So that's the Tristram Collingwood intersection upgrade, and also the proposed upgrades of the Gordonton Road intersection. So we've got some briefing slides to go over, and I think some information has been provided in briefing notes on Diligent as well. So Robin will lead us through Tristram Collingwood, and then I'll probably lead through a little bit of the Gordonton Road intersection upgrades options. We've also got Darman Singh, our project manager for Tristram Collingwood, online, as well as Grant Trigger, our transport improvement program manager. So Robin, on that, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Chris. So elected members will recall that Tristram Collingwood intersection has been a topic of discussion, resulting really from when we first heard about the ACC moving in, building their new building, or TGH building a new building for ACC on the corner where the student car park used to be. So that work's well underway and expected to be completed about October next year. We had some funding given to us to do some early concept work, and at that stage we were expecting the outcome indicated that traffic signals was likely to be the preferred outcome. We did a exec update earlier this year, and we got some really good feedback from elected members expressing concerns about that design, the impact that it was going to have on trees, which was obviously quite significant, but also whether this was actually going to provide the best outcome from a walking and cycling perspective. So we took that on board. We've gone away and had a look further at some more options, and we are now looking at this Dutch style roundabout. So next slide, whoever's the magic person. So basically what we've looked at is not only the intersection, but we've had a look at the key linkages along Tristram Street to the south to link into work that we have in the last couple of years completed at the intersection with Thackeray Street. So that's off to the right-hand side of your screen as you're looking at it. And we've also had a look at what options we can do to make sure that we get really good linkages to the north through to Ward Street intersection, and then obviously to the Western Rail Trail, and also for the work that we've got planned in the future for the Ward Street upgrade for the linkages into the CBD. So next slide. So this is just a little bit of a sort of zoom in to give you a bit of an idea as to what some of that looks like. And I'll hand over for the team to work through it now, but I guess I'll just finish with the note that this is the early stages. And thank you, Councillor Angela, for providing that link to some examples from overseas. We're working closely with Waka Kotahi to make sure that we get the markings and all of that sort of detail correct for the New Zealand situation. So we're being very specific when we say it's a Dutch style roundabout. It's not necessarily going to be a cookie cutter Dutch roundabout coming into here, but we'll be taking the learnings and that obviously from overseas and working with people to ensure that we get a really good outcome here. So I'm happy to hand over to perhaps Darman just to talk through what we've got and what sort of the key components that we have
that'll
now.
be great. And then our members will go to questions when we're fully informed.
Thank you, Robin. I think Grant's going to carry on from this point. Grant, are you on?
Yeah.
On yeah.
Hopefully this is working. My camera isn't, but more than all, it's Grant Tregear. I just thought I'd go through starting with the why this has all come about. And there's, it's reducing the number of near misses at this location, which has been reported, improving the walking and cycling connections and encouraging that mode shift, providing a cycle-friendly city, allowing for future growth. So, for example, the ACC building on the corner there is a development with which will provide or cause additional alternate modes at this location. And how we've come up with this option, it's really analysing everything against levels of service and safety for vehicles, pedestrians and cyclists, and then also taking into account the overall cost. So that comes down to the what, which is the Dutch style roundabout presented here, was considered the best option when taking into account the list of those benefits. And some of the pros and cons are around the level of service obviously increases for alternate modes, walking and cycling, and a level of service, lower level of service for vehicular traffic. The pros on this project were cheaper to construct, the ability to retain the trees, retaining the existing roundabout layout, which people understand, are familiar with as far as consultation goes. When we go to public, that it's going to be quite easy to understand how it'll look and operate, and obviously the improved walking and cycling safety.
I think it is worth noting at this stage too that the modelling work we did for the traffic signals was indicating that the levels of service for the vehicles through here was going to be quite severely impacted, while taking this intersection down to a single lane circulating and reducing the approach lanes down to single lane as well. The levels of service that we are modelling for this style of intersection treatment are still better than what the traffic signals were going to be.
Okay.
Okay, to
Robin,
take questions now. So,
Yep. All right. So I'll start at the top of my list. Mayor Paula, you're up first.
Old hand. Sorry, old hand.
Oh, old hand. Okay. Councillor Ryan.
Thanks, Angela. Yeah, thanks, Robin. Two questions. Appreciating it's obviously early design, and you've just done this mock-up. I knew nothing of it, and I saw Angela's YouTube video. The YouTube video, the patterns and designing relating to the specific modes, i.e. the cycles and the pedestrians, were really easy to follow, and more so than the mock-up that we've got in the PowerPoint. So I guess early days, but I assume you'll test the design out a little bit further in terms of we want to make sure that we land on something that is, easy for everyone from the outset. We don't want another.
Yeah. We want it self-explaining for the people who are down there so that they know where they're meant to go and what they're meant to do. Is that what you're after?
Yeah, self-explaining, because we've been told other things were self-explaining when perhaps weren't.
Yes.
The other thing a question on was, and you mentioned it, given that they would be going to single laning, and you've articulated that the modelling shows that's actually going to be better than lights. Your algorithms that you use in terms of obviously the wider network, you've got the lights by Girls High up the other end, and then you've got the sort of the police station light or roundabout the other end, which is always quite congested during peak. Will this factor all that in to try and ensure that, or the algorithm is that across this whole section, that it'll work best during those peak times?
So the modelling looks specifically at the intersection, but it draws on and understands what the traffic flows are coming through from each leg at the various times of day. So it does, that's where it sort of recognises the network as to where it's actually sitting within the city and what traffic's coming in and out of it at various times.
So I guess just a quick expansion on that. The wider network, you've got traffic lights across the bridges at peak traffic, up by the Catholic Church at the top of the bridge there. You've got the other section down Tristram and Mill Street. Will all those traffic light signals, will they adapt to the change that this new structure and obviously ACC and all the new infrastructure is going to put on it?
Yeah, so John Kinghorn and his team are doing that on a daily basis. So the traffic signals already have a certain amount of intelligence within them, and that's what's known as the SCAT system. So those detectors in the road are picking up what delays, what traffic we've got going through it and that sort of thing. But the team are also keeping an eye on it and understanding what's happening, and are always doing what we call optimization work to make sure that things are working well. We don't think that the impact here is going to have wide network disbenefits. We know that the city in peak times has low levels of service at a whole lot of locations, and that happens for about an hour in the morning and evening when we go through that absolute peak. But we can't build our whole network to just cater for that short 1 hour period. We just kind of suffer a little bit of pain at that time, and the rest of the time it's generally fairly good.
Okay, thanks, Robin. And sorry, Angela, just a brainwave I had, and potentially I need to take it offline. But we've talked about with schools, the schools finishing at different times just to sort of mitigate some of that peak flow. Is it worth us talking to TGH or ACC just to see whether they might stagger their finish time rather than I don't know if it's a 4:30 or a 5 p.m. Whether we can just have some nuance around some of that, perhaps.
Yeah, so we've got a piece of work that we've started with ACC for a travel plan. So elected members, I think, are getting more and more sort of familiar with that term and the potential that has. And that's certainly all those sorts of things that we can put into that mix, as you say, stopping it being a rush hour at 5 o'clock where everybody leaves the building. What are their, flexi working opportunities such that people can stagger those start and finish times, not even necessarily all having to come into the office every day of the week. How do they actually help people get to and from their site safely, and that sort of thing will be all the sorts of things that we look at within that travel plan.
Is it true that Dave McPherson started the idea of a travel plan? Because he seems to claim it.
No comment, Your Honour.
All right, thank you.
It's a good, if no one else asks the question, we'll come back to it, Robin, but it's a good thing raised, because I note in the discussion document, it says that there'll be approximately 700 employees with 30 car parks, which causes me to gasp for breath, but the majority of staff will access by active mode. So as soon as I read that, I thought, well, we must be working with them for travel plans. So I'd like to understand a bit more about that later on. So next up is Councillor Maxine.
Thanks, Angela, and I share your interest in some of the details of that travel plan, because I thought 30 car parks is going to put some real pressure on people arriving early and taking up street parking.
So I guess to be clear, those 30 car parks are for the operation of ACC. They're not staff car parks, and I guess that's why we've been really mindful for this one about recognising that we are going to have walking and cycling is going to grow huge, and that's whether you've walked from where you parked a car or walked from where the bus has dropped you off. Definitely. Yeah.
So I was really excited to see this concept. I've used a Dutch roundabout, and it's a fabulous way to be able to treat different modes and respect their opportunity to be able to get around. What does happen though in Holland is that it is there's a priority hierarchy, and that's different to what we have here in New Zealand, with the cyclist having the top and pedestrians having top priority. Is that what you're planning also for here, Robin?
Yes, correct. Yes.
And so will we, and what are we going to do about educating the public about how to use it? You talked about self-explaining, but yeah, that might not be quite so easy to do in this circumstance. How are you going to do that?
Well, I guess the good old-fashioned white stripes for the pedestrian crossing are, already a well-recognised tool that we have, and people are well schooled in the fact that they need to stop and give way for pedestrians when we have those zebra crossing markings. I think the detail and around making sure that we get that same sort of compliance around cyclists crossing will also be a key component of this. And that's why we're in part working with Waka Kotahi, because this is not going to be something that's just peculiar to Hamilton City. We need to be able to have all motorists understand this and be able to implement these sorts of things across the country. The Accessible Streets regulatory package, and you're probably sick of me referring to this constantly, but that actually had the exact legislation change that we need to also formalise the requirement for cars to give way and to cyclists in these sorts of situations. So that's potentially something that we've got David Spears coming to the Infrastructure Ops Committee in September. And that's a piece of legislation that I think we need to be really trying to push to get that out, because not only applicable here, but a whole lot of situations for turning cars, giving way to pedestrians and cyclists at side roads and that sort of thing would really benefit from having that Accessible Streets regulatory package landed.
Oh, thank you for reminding me about that. That sounds perfect. In terms of the speed limit along there, presumably people slow down at a roundabout, but what's the rest of that road speed limit? Is that staying at 50 kilometres an hour?
At this stage, yes.
And is there any intention to reduce the speed?
It's something that we could have a look at. I think, the likes of Collingwood Street's probably got some potential in the future for an expanded sort of 30 introducing it into that greater CBD area. But we do need to be mindful that this general area is still, Tristram Street still operating as a key arterial. The speed limit rule change is also looking at allowing, lower speed limits at intersections. So that's another opportunity that we have in the future for not necessarily having to put all of Tristram Street, for example, down to that lower speed limit, but being able to put a 30k speed limit specifically for this intersection in place.
Okay, and then finally, the only other area of concern would be driveways that take people out on and across, some of those cycling things. How are we proposing to treat those?
I guess we're lucky with this section where we actually don't have as many vehicle crossings as we do in some other locations. The treatment that and an idea of trying to provide that linkage up through to Ward Street is some early thinking. To do it 100% properly, we would need to remove the trees through there, but that's not seen as desirable. There's some beautiful, well-established trees up and over the Tristram Street hill outside Wintec. So we are working through that. But this is, I guess, creating this new standard that we're looking for through the biking and micromobility, and again, creating a generic treatment for this sort of approach moving forward. We do have the cycle facilities not hard up against the boundary. That's where we've got the footpath. So that gives a little bit of space as well for everyone seeing each other.
Okay, thank you. Look, I've got millions of more questions, but there's others. Thank you, Robin.
Thanks, Maxine. Councillor Dave.
Thanks, Angela. Some absolutely excellent questions by Maxine, and reasonable ones from you, from Ryan as well. But in answer to his question about travel plans, it is absolutely true that I invented them 23 years ago, and Robin was the only one here long enough to be able to deny that, and she won't comment, so that's great. Look, it's a beautiful design. I wondered if some staff had thought of entering into a public art competition. But slightly more seriously, on one of the points that Maxine raised, I've also used some Dutch roundabouts in some, I'm not thinking of the ones in Amsterdam, and I'm thinking of the ones in the sort of regional cities in a couple of cases. And Maxine is right that they work well because of the hierarchy, and if a car approaching a pedestrian roundabout sees a cyclist or a pedestrian within about 500 meters, they slow down and stop just about, and it's absolutely ingrained into people then. And Robin, I just wanted to comment on this. I heard you talk about the zebra crossing side of things, which is certainly noticeable, especially in the red and white, as being the driver for the correct behaviour there. And I think that will happen if you are approaching the roundabout. But I'm thinking there's a car, for instance, that shows in that picture that's turning left from Tristram Street up into Collingwood Street, and they're coming from a 50k arterial. Even if it's onto a 30k there, they won't have good sight line of that pedestrian crossing immediately, and they whip around those corners there at the moment. So my concern is about safety for pedestrians and cyclists, but particularly pedestrians, I think, in that area, because that's a high pedestrian area already, which is going to be added to, obviously, by the ACC building. So, is there room for, there's not even room for more than one car to queue there and for the roundabout to still work. So just some comments on the safety and the priority for pedestrians for cars exiting the roundabout particularly. I can see how it'll work when you can see what's directly in front of you.
Yes, and I guess we are realigning the curb lines. They're not just the same alignment, so tightening things up, and also putting that nice big collar on the roundabout so that it's tightening the whole area up to manage the speeds. I agree that the devil's going to be in the detail here, and that's why we've called on Waka Kotahi to help us with making sure that we are getting the markings and that sort of thing all correct, and making sure that safety is going to be, that is the key driver for this project. And so that we've already done some early sort of safety reviews to make sure we believe we're on track, and to make sure that there are not any fatal flaws in this. And that's something that we will continue to be working on.
But with all due respect to my great friends in Waka Kotahi, they're not exactly fast movers or early adopters of good technology. They were starting to think of this stuff when I first got on council 23 years ago, and still haven't sort of got to the end of it. Seriously, I would like us to put our own lens over this.
Definitely.
By all means,
yes.
Stick up a couple of little signs, but we need to be confident that we don't have them driving it, that we're driving it, if I can use that term.
Yes. Yep, 100% with you. And I guess I won't be putting anything out there that I'm not convinced is safe. And elected members will recall when we looked at 5 Crossroads and we tried to come up with a solution there, and I wasn't happy, and I was quite happy to tell you I wasn't happy and to recommend it not proceed. So we will we'll be taking a lot of care with this. We're really mindful that we need to get it 100% right.
Right, thanks. One other question to do with the ACC travel plan situation. Good questions by Maxine and Angela about the number of car parks, but I think the question about their travel plan is, do we have control over that, or do they just put up something that's sort of off the shelf and plug their name into it and it looks good, but is there any monitoring? Do we actually say, well, that's not good enough, you need to add here and there?
So we're looking to, and we're just in the early days. We've started those conversations with them. We certainly want to work alongside them with that. We've got some good learning from the work that we've been doing with the DHB. Obviously, Regional Council will be a key party to this as well, and our own travel planning. So we're in the early stages for that. And right at the very beginning of the project, we were looking at things like, well, where are your staff coming from? What are the opportunities for them to have increased bus usage? We will be wanting to be proactively involved with the ongoing monitoring of this. And I guess as a wider statement with the district plan review for NPSUD, this is what I see as being, it needs to become business as usual for these sorts of developments to actually have good travel plans, for them to be actively delivering them, for us to have the ability to monitor and get feedback, and occasionally pop in and make sure that those, you know, lovely end of trip facilities are actually available for staff and haven't been filled with boxes of whatever products they're trying to sell, which, you know, we do suspect happens a bit at the moment. So that's certainly something that I'm really keen to see improved through the NPSUD review as well.
Great. I agree with that generic point too, but just a question, part of that on buses. You talked about buses using it. To my knowledge, there's not many bus routes, if any, through Tristram or Collingwood, that part of Collingwood, further up there is. And should part of, and I can't see any buses in the picture, and I can't see any bus stops in the picture. And it would seem to me that we should be also working with the regional council. Clearly, more development shifting over westwards towards Tristram from Anglesey. You know, we're spreading over that way, and there's a number of big institutions soon that will be along that. Should we be working with the regional council like now, so that next year, when this building's finished, we can get some bus routes there and actually plug in some bus stops north and south of this intersection for ACC and Wintec and Girls High?
So Tristram Street doesn't have capacity for bus stops. Collingwood Street does, particularly the section between Collingwood Street heading back to Anglesey, and we do have bus stops there now.
But they're not that close. They're not close. They're not.
Yeah, they're not. They're probably just out of picture. So they're the regional facilities come through there. So we have been chatting to them about that, and there's certainly opportunities for moving those bus stops closer. And that was why we were keen for ACC to have a good look at where people were coming from, so that we could understand what services, you know, what bus routes they were actually going to be able to be using, and therefore where they're going to get off. The farmers, well, sorry, it's not the farmers, the old farmers building, the DHB one in Anglesey Street, is probably going to be the closest one for this site.
Well, yeah, I'm suggesting that's probably not good enough, and I'm not blaming you guys, because that's historical why that's happened. But I would like to see a public transport plan for this precinct that, you know, that doesn't just show active transport in cars. We might need to bring that up, Chair Angela, on Friday at the Connections Committee as well, because it's not just us, ACC, so obviously it's moving down into that area. They are, and Genesis and all sorts.
Yeah, the Friday meeting, Dave, is the regional issues one, so I'm not going to that one.
Oh, okay.
It's not our Hamilton. It's not our normal one. They don't make it very clear on there.
No, they definitely
invite.
didn't. Angela Strange asked me specifically if I was going.
Yeah. I mean, we can go, but I just,
Yeah. No, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm happy to raise it with the regional council in the meantime, though, Councillor Dave.
Yeah, I just think if we're saying you need a travel plan, show us how your people going to use buses and that. Well, if the nearest bus is a block and a half away, makes it hard to drive that much.
Mm-hmm.
That's all mine. Thanks. Angela, can we sort of record the public transport issue as something that we need to check out a bit more?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Councillor Sarah, you're next.
Thank you, Angela. And yeah, firstly, very excited about this roundabout. My questions, firstly, cost. Robin, I'm interested in what we're expecting, I mean, the kind of likely range, I know it's really early days, to be for this, because you mentioned it will probably be lower cost than the intersection.
So I think Darman or Grant, sorry, it's a bit hard being remote and not being able to see people.
I can take that, Robin.
Thank you.
So yes, it's still early days, but at this stage, high level, we're looking at, for the intersection itself, approx $3 million for the construction of what you can see on the screen there.
Cool.
And that will also include some of the work on Tristram to the south of this to connect into existing. In Tristram North, which is the other section which goes up over the hill, there will be another $2 million if it was decided to do that as well as part of this.
Oh, which Tristram North? So that's
towards Street.
Okay, yes, gotcha. And so you're looking at a bit less than the intersection, and potentially then I guess that just goes back into our general funding, or could we look at if there are particular issues that come up in their travel plan around safety for people, or bus, public transport issues or anything, that we can look at addressing those?
Yep, we're certainly happy to have that discussion. I guess there's probably some more discussions around funding and allocations coming up just as a result of the NLTP sort of discussions, or outcomes that came through. So I think we'll be having those discussions over the next few months anyway, so we can hook that all in as part of that.
Cool. And I guess just in terms of calling it, so it's going to be, I guess, the first Dutch style roundabout. There is a roundabout slightly similar on Franklin Road and Wellington intersection in Auckland, but they have a shared path around it rather than the two separated lanes. But I was just thinking in terms of communication with the public, do you think we might call it something like a multimodal roundabout? Or I don't know, there might be a name that feels more relevant to people.
Definitely. I think, that's the whole comms sort of thing that we'll need to work through. So yeah, definitely. The fact that it's the Dutch is not necessarily telling the general public too much.
No, in fact, they might say, well, we're not Dutch, so why do we what are you doing bringing the roundabouts here? That's cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Councillor Kish.
Thank you. Where am I? Thank you. Just a couple of questions. The picture looks amazing, by the way. It is a work of art. And I just wanted to check in terms of with what Dave was talking about in terms of public transport and things. From what I see, we're reducing the number of lanes approaching the roundabout, but we're also reducing the correct me if I'm wrong, it's a double lane roundabout at the moment?
Yeah, so currently currently the majority of Tristram Street is single lane, and then it widens out just at the intersection to become two lanes around the roundabout, and then a short merge as you go off it, which the short merge in itself often creates a bit of a fight as to who's going to go first.
And so at the moment, is there any priority for buses? No.
And there's very few buses using this route currently.
Okay, that answers that. Thank you. And in terms of similar to what Ryan mentioned, the overall flow impact, when will we see some work around that? In terms of, waiting times, creating gridlocks of, at intersections surrounding this.
So we've done that work. And we know that the traffic signals are going to create more congestion and queues than what this roundabout will.
So what is the comparison from current to this?
It's certainly a little bit worse than current because we are taking away some of that capacity. When it comes to the actual number of seconds delay and that sort of thing, then I'd have to get the consultants to dig that out. But I think we need to remember that we're also looking for a city where we're trying to reduce the number of cars and promote the walking and cycling. So having a little bit more delay at peak times shouldn't be something that we're too, concerned about.
That's where my concern lies, because we're also a growing city. And yes, we're trying to move to multi-modes, but you also have all these extra people coming in, and ACC with 700 odd and all these new developments. So where are the current people going to go, plus all the new people, plus, we're trying to shift modes. So I guess my concern is just creating more of a gridlock than a solution, because there's only an X percentage of people who will move to different modes, but we're also having a whole lot of new people coming into the city. So you've got to still cater for both.
Yes, and as I said, there will be some delay and some increased delay at peak times. Yeah. We know that Anglesey Street still has lots of unused capacity on it. So it's not like this is the only road in and out of the CBD. Yeah. So Anglesey Street also has quite a large capacity to take more vehicles as well. Sorry.
No, like with I'd hate to see the same backlash as we had with Ward in terms of the delay, with people getting home after work and things, because we want this to have a positive impact. We don't want it to, be another downer that the city is moving into gridlocking people and preventing them from getting home for dinner. So, and I know that Anglesey, yes, has capacity, but then the Anglesey-Bryce intersection is also gridlocked, at peak times. So anyway,
so I can make sure in the report we have some information on the level of service impacts from where we are here versus the options that we've looked at.
Please. And also, have we talked to ACC about this yet?
Oh, yes. And so speaking on behalf of Darwin, we're talking to them also about the timing of when we build it, so that we're working in with their build construction program, because they obviously have some large cranes and bits and pieces they need to bring in as well. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Angela.
Robin, I just wonder if in the report, if there could be a little bit of commentary around. I think where Kesh was going, I hold a slightly different view, but where Kesh was going with her questions around, I mean, the reality is, I don't think any city in the world could actually build for capacity for congestion if you're a growing city, right? We would need to be 10 times the size of our land boundary to keep up with that, whether we do things like this or not. So a bit of commentary around that, I think, might help with the framing, perhaps.
Mhm.
Thanks so much. Great questions, Councillor Mark.
Thank you very much. I agree. It is a work of art, and it'd be ironic if we had an accident right next to ACC. That hasn't escaped me either. But I was interested in Max's question around priority for cyclists. So you're saying that the rules will be when you come up to here, and I've got to say I like it, cars will give way to pedestrians and cyclists, Robin?
Correct.
So this would be the only place in town that this happens so far, wouldn't it? I can't think of any cycle merge that has the right of way. Even you Clauden's Bridge, etc. It's sharing.
So it is something relatively new. Yes, and that's where that regulatory package is. The aim of that accessible streets regulatory package is to make this the norm at a whole lot of other locations in our transport network. So
right,
yeah.
Oh, cool. I need to get it. Sorry, I didn't understand that bit because I think it's a really great opportunity to get this all over town. That priority re-ranking, I think it's fantastic. Okay, are the crossings raised?
Yes,
they are. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And I was really interested in the bit that Darvin showed before about the extension of the cycleway up Tristram Street, goes up to the top of the hill I saw. Does it carry on right over to the connection of the Western Rail Trail? Because that would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it?
Yes.
So it does.
Yeah. So the bright red that you can see there is Hill Street.
Oh, yep.
That's the Hill Street crossing. To the left-hand side takes you down and joins you into the Ward Street.
Okay.
So just to be clear on that, the current scope of the project doesn't include that connection all the way through. So that the connection at the moment just kind of ties into Tristram Street, as shown on the picture there. So the connection all the way back to Ward Street. Yes, it's a great opportunity and makes sense, but it's currently something that's not currently in the scope of the delivery project.
One thing I've learned about putting in cycle infrastructure is it's got to be connected to other stuff so it gets used, so it gets positive uptake. I think the connections to this are critical, aren't they? Like even connecting across the other part of Collingwood Street, the flat part. It would be pointless to have a beautiful cycle facility that connects to nothing, I suppose. Is it? I guess what I'm getting at. Okay. Second last question. Dutch roundabouts are contingent on visibility. That tree in the middle, is that necessary anymore?
Look, I think there's a desire, and there's a desire to obviously keep the trees. And there's also benefits from having the trees and that sort of thing to create the right environment and to keep it nice and tight and closed. That helps to manage the speeds. It helps to, I guess, not have, and that's one of the disadvantages of traffic signals. You end up with this, huge black sort of hot concrete sort of area. Yeah. So it is about creating a very different environment. And so I think actually the trees in the middle are a vital component of that. Okay. The fact that you've got the wide shoulders actually gives you quite a bit of visibility as well.
Yeah. Okay. No. So no. Like obviously, I don't want to cut down trees like anyone either, but I'm just thinking it's not going to defeat the purpose of what we're trying to achieve. Okay, that's cool. And last question: is this a kind of roundabout that could work at 5 Crossroads?
Yes, that's the sort of style that I think they were looking at for that. Obviously, it's got an extra leg in it.
That's what I was going to ask. Is actually, I would have thought with a 5-legged roundabout, it actually might be even better with reprioritization.
It's about space and that sort of thing. And I think one of the challenges for the 5 Crossroads is where we go for the buses as well. But it's also been clearly sort of marked for that business case that their 5 Crossroads is an area that needs to come back, needs to have some more work. Certainly we'll have a lot better understanding about how things work after we've got this one in place. Okay. So it's yes, quite probably might be my answer.
Okay. In case you hadn't gathered, I'm excited. Carry on.
Are you Mark?
Yeah, I know it's hard to believe, but true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Councillor Martin.
Yes, sorry, I started to fade away when Dave was talking about nominating this for Public Art Award. And if we were in closed session, then I would want to have a flagpole with the flag of the Netherlands, Holland flying, so everyone knew it was a Dutch roundabout. But seriously, the question I want to ask is, we call Dutch style roundabout concept, and it wouldn't. I'm not implying for one moment that drivers in Holland have a higher driving school than drivers in New Zealand, if you want to look at our road fatality statistics and serious injury. But the education thing, Robin, can you just drill down in terms of, because this is a different style roundabout, different behaviours, which we've talked about. What's going to be the comms? Obviously there's going to be a clear comms strategy around this, a long-term comms strategy.
Yes, there will need to be. I mean, at this stage, we're trying to provide elected members with an opportunity to understand it better. But at the Infrastructure Ops Committee at the end of the month to actually approve this so that we can continue to work on it. So we haven't climbed into doing comm strategies and those sorts of things at this stage. Fully agree that we'll need to have a good one, a good comm strategy in place, and be doing some education around all of that. And that was also a key component of that Accessible Streets regulatory package, was that to make sure that everyone understands how they're meant to behave in these areas. We need to have really good comms and education.
And I wouldn't underestimate even keeping a reference to a so-called Dutch style, so people have a name, they understand this is a particular different type of roundabout than others. So I wouldn't underestimate that from a comms strategy. The other question, in terms of the Denton, McPherson travel plans that we have, I was a wee bit worried because Angela talked about, the links, or someone talked about links to the Western Rail Trail, etc. In terms of, the micro-mobility, cycle, pedestrian, if we're looking at where people work at ACC, Wintec, and where they may park or ride or whatever, do we need to do more work just to make sure that we have joined those dots? In other words, you have a cycleway, then suddenly it disappears. You have, for a mobility scooter, and then it disappears.
Yes, and I guess that's partly why we've done that work to provide that link to the Western Rail Trail, noting that that's not within scope. So that's something that we're going to have a conversation around budget and how we deliver that. We've also got the biking and micromobility business case that's yet to quite land, and hopefully when it lands will unlock some more opportunities for delivering these types of works. And certainly getting good micromobility, even end of trip facilities are the sorts of things that we early on discussed with ACC, making sure that they've got plenty of bike parks and, they've got charges for the e-bikes or e-scooters that people personally have. And I'm sure that the likes of our Lime and Neuron will also be targeting these sorts of facilities and be keen to work with, where are people actually going to park and walk or scoot from wherever they park the car if they choose to do that.
In terms of the scoot bit, are you happy and satisfied that the interaction between it could be a significant number using their scooters to scoot from a car park or a bus stop to the ACC building, for example, the design of the pedestrians / people who are using the scooters, that's going to be good, or is there going to be, again, a whole heap of education both for the scooter riders and pedestrians?
The issue around scooters is a really complicated one, and this is why the Accessible Streets regulatory package is really important, because it has some nonsense in at the moment where it tells people where they legally should be scooting, which doesn't make any sense. And so that accessible streets regulatory package tidies all of that up. But I think it will depend on the confidence and therefore the speed of the scooters, people scooting. Some of them will quite happily probably take the role of being more of a pedestrian. Others will go at greater speed with greater confidence and probably will just slot into being more of a cyclist. But we've got fantastic facilities proposed here that will be able to cater for that.
Yeah, and logically, the ACC will be an incredible partner both with funding and education of their own workforce in this area.
We would certainly hope so. Practice what you preach might be the term that we perhaps use.
One will assume in this whole area of multimodal scooters, they will be the ideal partner for us.
Well said, Martin. So look, I've just got a couple of questions that weren't covered by members, Robin, and then we're going.
Angela, just by chance. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yep. Right. You go then.
No, it's
sorry,
really,
I only saw your hand just now.
That's okay. It's really hard with the Zoom. I know to see what's going on. It's hard. I've just been sitting here listening. It was a very interesting conversation. Just in terms of the integration of transport solutions, we've heard about scooters and bikes and safety and slowing down traffic, and all that's been excellent conversation. ACC are particularly keen, as are Wintec, in exploring Mevo and used to be Zoom, not Zoom, Loop. Loop. Thank you. Used to be Loop. And I'm just wondering how that factors in with, because even though ACC love their building, I have heard that conversation starting to erupt now about parking, where do people park, etc. And so I'm wondering how an infrastructure like this might factor in close accessibility of shared fleets. Where do you know where?
So there's two options I see. So one is that they've got 30 car parks and they're more than able to actually allocate 2, 3, 4, 5 of them to be shared car parks.
I think they are.
And then there's also the ability for us to, in the way we have for other locations, to designate spots out on the surrounding network to cater for that as well. I guess that we just need to work with Mevo to make sure that that's an economic proposition for them, obviously. But yeah, there's certainly nothing stopping that happening.
You might know I've been doing some work with Mevo and putting some partners together, and they are in touch with ACC about an economic proposition alongside ourselves with the base level of cars. But I just thinking, but my question was broader than that, because yes, I think ACC and I think Rabobank also will be, forward thinking. So my view is, how do we encourage more spaces in the CBD for shared car services? So just put that on there, that these things factor that in too. Somewhere along the road there needs to be some visible places for shared cars. But anyway, if we can just get it on the next agenda or something, how these fits in, that would be good.
Yep, we're happy to respond to Mevo for requests for more of them sites, basically. I see them probably coming to us, them identifying where they think they've got a good market share and then working with them. So yeah, more than happy to work with them.
They have. We need to get both parts of the organisation talking together. They've been talking with Fleet and Richard and other people.
So can I, so Evelisa, just jumping in here. So we are working closely with Mevo. They do have 75 allocated car parks. And so it is around how we work with them on the city centre streets. But then there's also the other opportunities that Mevo and other car share companies have to go and deliver those privately to other businesses as well. So there is a partnership opportunity there, and there is a report coming back on that in terms of Mevo and car share back to the Infrastructure Operations Committee.
Can we park that item now then? We're way behind here. Mayor Paula, did you have anything else on the intersection?
No, thank you. Looks very
Thanks. So I just, I'll be very, very quick. Just a few questions, surprisingly, that weren't picked up by others. Robin, and I hate, you know me, I do not like getting into the detail, but what occurs to me is when I look at the concept, if I'm a car, say I'm coming in down Collingwood to approach the roundabout, if the priority is for pedestrians and cyclists, and in peak hour, the cars say there's no one on the pedestrian crossing, no one on the cyclist lane, and the cars start stacking from where that white car is on Collingwood back, then suddenly that hierarchy goes out the window, doesn't it? Because if I'm a cyclist coming from Tristram, there's cars parked on the green cycle lane and the pedestrian crossing. So suddenly my priority's gone.
Legally, you're not allowed to park over a pedestrian crossing.
Okay, all right. And same with the green cycle lane?
That's what we need to make sure and be clear that we've got that in that hierarchy. So yes.
Okay, so with that in mind, because when I was watching that YouTube video, I sort of tried to watch where they had the stacking spaces as well for cars queuing. Is it possible, and I know that as roading authorities, we don't like signs, but when I immediately think of prioritisation issues that we've had, Worley Place, although it's completely different treatment, I understand, has always been a bit of a bugbear, and because it's cars think that they have the right of way, and really pedestrians should have the right of way in Worley Place. And I know that Dave and myself, but particularly Dave, for years have said just put up a sign that says pedestrians have right of way. So given and thinking about what Martin said about education and others have said, can we have an idea at some point as we move through this, what an on-the-ground education program would look like, even if it was temporary signs saying pedestrians have right of way, and what we could sort of get away with, what would be allowed for on location at the site? I'm interested in that. And I think I had one other question. Oh, just you've mentioned NZTA, and I know that we're not getting any funding for this. This would be the first proper whatever we call it style roundabout in the country. Is that right? And if that's the case, then why aren't they coming? Why are they so interested when they're not partnering us with some funding? Or do you think that there's a possibility that they might? Because they should, right? If we're going to be leading this.
Yeah, so I guess from their perspective, it's about seeing and ensuring the safety outcomes, etc. I'm knocking on that door and I'm trying to look at funding opportunities. I've got a meeting this afternoon on it.
Excellent. Okay, cool. All right, great. Look, lots of feedback. I think the top things for me that I picked up was around we're wanting some more detail around travel plans and how it works and what's our role around the whole PT infrastructure and congestion impacts as well. So look for. So Robin, just in terms of process, so what's the next step for elected members' involvement?
So this is a report to the Infrastructure Ops Committee at the end of the month.
Okay, great, cool. All right, so let's move on to, Carmen was trying to get hold of staff to see if they can move the 1 PM item back. So Carmen, what are you suggesting here? I know you haven't been able to get hold of anyone. So actually she's messaged me, if we can cover off the Gordonton Puketaha intersection in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I can run through this really quickly and then potentially take some of the questions offline if we need to. So I just wanted to give a high-level overview of the Gordonton Road corridor. Just a brief reminder to elected members, we've had a long-term program around this corridor. You'll recall we upgraded the Gordonton Thomas intersection a few years back. And we've also been recently undertaking some of the works as shown on this visual around the walking cycling networks through the area. But we've got funded projects planned to be implemented this financial year. So planned construction in early 2022 around an upgrade of the Darjon Gordonton intersection, which is the green dot on the left on this picture, and the Gordonton Puketaha intersection. So today I just wanted to go over the scope of the Gordonton Puketaha intersection. In the report that's going to be coming to the Infrastructure Operations Committee on the 28th of September, we're effectively putting up two options for the scope of that intersection. So elected members will probably recall we've been through this track before in terms of the Puketaha Gordonton Road intersection. You can see Puketaha Road here on the right-hand side, heading out into the Waikato district, and you've got St James Drive on the left here. The current macroscope approval is to construct a three-legged roundabout, so not connecting in the St James Drive section at this time. However, future-proofing that intersection for a future connection in the future. We do have an option at the moment. We believe, in terms of our cost estimates, to deliver potentially the four-legged intersection within our existing LTP budgeted funding allocations. So that's effectively the option that we're going to be putting forward to elected members: is do you want to connect that fourth leg now within the existing funding allocations? There is potentially some more investment associated with that, but we feel it's able to be accommodated within the existing budgets, or do we stick with the existing three-legged roundabout? So that's what we're seeking direction on, so that we can proceed with the next stages of detailed design, procurement and construction.
Thanks,
I'll
Chris.
propose to leave it there.
Yep, thank you. We'll go straight to questions. Me, Paula.
Sorry. Hands up again.
Oh, Councillor Bunting.
Hi, thank you. When we were talking about the four-legged roundabout last term, I remember meeting a lot of the residents, and their concern was speed and rat running down St James. But since then, we've put it in, is it 3 or 4 raised speed humps? So I kind of consider that may have well been mitigated. So I just sort of want to give you an early indication of I'd be supportive of the four-leg thing. If you can do it within budgets, and notwithstanding how much more it would cost when we eventually do it 7 or 8 years down the track if we stick to our original plan. So yeah, that's really all I wanted to say, is sort of voice a bit of support for you. Cool. Was my mute on? Oh no,
no, you're right.
No, we heard you.
just boring, eh? Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Councillor Ryan.
Thanks, Angela. Chris, me on the page 58 of us, you've got the P50 to the P95. Is that just the range? Is it? I didn't understand what that was.
Yeah, sorry, that's probably a bit of a technical term there. So we do different levels of estimates to understand the cost sensitivity. So in terms of cost estimation, P50 is 50% of the time we'd expect it to land within that budget allocation, within that cost. P95 has got extra contingencies. So basically, if all risks are realised, 95% of the time we'd expect to be landing within that cost. So that's why that range is a bit higher, but it's more of a sensitivity test. Our expected cost is around the P50 estimates.
Okay, and what's that? And then you go further out, you've got the budget column, which is 4255 for the 2, 3-leg and 4-leg. How does that? I just don't quite understand what that's. Is that sort of an estimate between the two if you went for the 4-leg? Or?
Sorry, no, the 4255 is what the budget allocations that we've currently got in the LTP are. So effectively for the Gordonton Puketaha intersection in the annual plan this year, we've got $4.2 million, including a deferral from from last financial year. So that's where the budget allocation sits, and that's where we think that the cost estimate to deliver the 4 legs fits within that existing budget allocation.
Okay, and so if you went to the 4-leg, potentially, if it went P95, you could be 745 short, thereabouts. There's a risk there.
Yeah, that's kind of the worst case scenario risk, and that's potentially something that we think we could mitigate at the time of, because we'd have to go through a procurement process and contract award before we commit to those final details as well, to potentially mitigate that if that was realised.
Okay, and just in terms of future proofing, if we only went with a 3-leg option, is there additional cost to then add the 4th leg down the track? Is there going to be, or is there more of a cost saving to do it now?
There's a cost. It's more of an efficiency moving forward, so there will be a little bit of rework and some time, but you don't need to we're designing it so that you wouldn't need to rip out the whole intersection, etc., to come and put the fourth leg in future. But there would obviously be some disruption and additional costs just in terms of efficiencies of having it all done at once versus coming in and doing it in two stages.
Sure. And in terms of today, are you looking for a steer from elected members, or are you going to present both back to the formal committee?
So effectively, we just wanted to put it on the table, seek any, if there's any particular items which anyone wanted included in the report, or key questions which might pop up, so that we can make sure the report can inform that decision-making process appropriately.
Thanks. Final question. The savings you've identified of 1.255 million, I guess that would potentially cover the shortfall of that risk that we just talked about.
Yeah, no, so the savings from the land is already included in that 4.255 budget. So originally the LTP had $3 million for this intersection, which was to deliver the 3-leg roundabout. Those land procurement savings are what's, I guess, generated the financial headroom to potentially build the 4 legs.
Final question. If we did go to market, can we say, look, this is the maximum, it's 4.255. There is no contingency, and I forget the term you use, but you put the risk on the tender contract that they've got to deliver the project for that price. Any risk is on them, like how we do the same thing with the NZTA, fixed sum or whatever it's called.
Yeah, guaranteed maximum price contracts are an option. I probably wouldn't recommend it in this case, because sometimes you end up paying a premium associated with them. But it's something we can look at potentially through the next stages of procurement planning as well. So good point. We can probably take that offline.
Thank you. Thanks, Angela.
Thanks. Just be aware, everyone, we're running way over time. So keep your questions succinct. Councillor Sarah.
Thanks, Angela. Chris, in the information you provide when it comes to the report, could you provide more context around the bus routes and what this would mean for the buses? And also, I'm interested in the residents. I can imagine, well, what kind of consultation we can do, because one concern I have is that you'll have a lot of residents, some are very concerned about rat running, despite there being, some raised crossings and stuff in there. And so I'm not comfortable going ahead with opening up the 4th leg without understanding what the reaction might be from the residents along St James Drive. And finally, I'm just interested in whether we're likely going to be developing the land on the other side of the roundabout in any, in the next, I guess, foreseeable future, because if we are, then I would see that it would be desirable to have raised crossings in all legs rather than just the 2, if there are going to be houses on the other side at some point. That's all.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sarah. Councillor, no, that's it?
Yeah, it was just around consultation, but Sarah
okay.
covered it. Thanks, Angela.
Okay, great. Yep, all right. Okay, so Chris, is that's all you needed from us?
Yep, no, I appreciate the feedback and commentary there.
Excellent,
cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so Carmen, did you hear back from staff or anything? I mean,
yes,
it's Mark's taking over the next item again, but we need some lunch. So what's the gap?
So I have managed to move some things back a bit, so you do get more than about 20 minutes for lunch. So if everyone is okay, we will move the next item to 1:30, giving you a fair amount of time, and the item after that, so the public arts and memorials policy workshop, will be at 2:15 until 3:15.
Okay, so so is there anything left in this briefing?
Yes, so after lunch we will have the give me a moment and I'll find the proper name for it. The Ideas Collide prospectus.
That's right. Okay, great.
So that is a closed item. We'll have that at 1:30.
1:30. Okay, so we're breaking for lunch now till 1:30.
Is that okay with everyone?
Yep.
Yep, cool.
Right. Thank
Sounds
you.
good to me.